trying to get here was back from 60.
First of all, one more round of applause, please, for Jeff. And while we get all set up, I do want to also acknowledge, of course, the person who coached them, which is our jazz guitar teacher, Mr. Scott Hesse, who is over here. who is leaving us at the end of this term. Seems to be a long-standing tradition at this place for jazz guitarists to teach here for a while and then go out on the road, some of whom never to come back, but not in the case of Scott. But he is going to be touring all around the Midwest in late summer and early fall, and along with his teaching duties at other institutions, he's decided to actually almost be a sane person and cut back just a little bit. But he's been teaching here for, I don't know how many years? Six years or so. And he's just been wonderful to have. There's a couple of his former students who are in the room, that are graduates and things like that. And I know they thank him, but we all thank him too. And here you go. So there's one more round. And I'm serious, I can think of at least 4 former teachers here who've gone out on the road. And it's fun. It's always fun to watch what happens. And in some cases, surprising. People think, well, I didn't expect to get that phone call. And there they go. And that's how this career works. We're going to tune up, and then you're going to hear the jazz sound. This next one is going to feature Anthony on trumpet, and a wonderful arrangement done by a former Chicagoan named Roger Pemberton, who was a sax player in town forever, and then he started teaching in South Carolina. And it was always interesting. He was a wonderful, wonderful guy. We played many times together, but he was really a workaholic. And on breaks, I could just still see him, even though he's been gone for a few years now. I can still see him in my mind on every break, running off to the side and writing out arrangements that were going to be sold along the way. And I don't know this at all, but I love to think that he and I were playing a gig, let's say at the Art Institute together, and then on the break we all go to the balcony and we all get something to drink, and he's over in the corner writing. And I love thinking that he was writing this arrangement, even though I have no basis for that. Anthony Nano on trumpets. This next one will be a little louder. It's going to feature a whole bunch of people in the band. And I'll tell you who they are after they play. Yash Pawar on piano. Playing your first public vibe solo in your life? Yeah, Zach Pawar. Not playing his first jazz solo in his life, as you've heard him play already today, but on guitar, Talo Bakar. And trombone from Colorado, Sam Orange. On trumpet, Anthony Gatto. And on the last bass, playing electric bass, although going back to the upright bass for this one, Jaslyn Alvarado. And not playing his first jazz solo here, but getting darn close to playing his last one here, on drums, Seamus Smith. This next piece was written by Wayne Shorter, who would be world famous from a jazz standpoint from either end of his career. One of them being sax player, of course, with Miles Davis, and with the original Weather Report, if you've heard the tune Birdland ever, the original version of Birdland is Wayne Shorter on saxophone. But on our end of it, as a jazz composer, and a very, very, very innovative one. This next one, it's an innovative arrangement of an already innovative tune. But This Is for Albert is not played all that often, mostly because it's kind of an intricate tune. But I love this arrangement, and I love playing with these guys, so this will be fun. This is Wayne Shorter, This Is for Albert. Haven't needed it. Starting from this side, you met him a moment ago, but still on piano. First time with us, last time. Back on drums now, Zach Aporto. On guitar, Talo Akar. On all the basses in the room, Jasmine Alvarado. New to jazz band this term, and if you see her on the softball field, don't be surprised. On tenor sax, Heidi Humboldt. Now my alto section of people who don't play alto. On second alto, actually a string bass player in real life, but you wouldn't know it today. Evelyn and And somebody you would today really never know that alto wasn't her first instrument because she's playing lead alto and pretty much killing it. But actually in real life, an oboe player, Osvaldo Alvarez. On trombone, Sam Orange. Which leaves me with the three people who are actually graduating. Starting out, it always pains me that much more when it's a trumpet player. And somebody who's not a music major, not a music minor, and is still chosen to spend at least 4 days a week with me, not counting his lessons. But he's been involved in brass ensemble, he's played lessons in carols, he's done everything around here, taking full advantage of this place as somebody who, again, isn't a music major or minor, but has played every bit of trumpet you can play around here. Anthony Nano. So as I end my 37th year in here, what's always sobering is, of course, I started here 3 years before they built this building. My office is in the same place, no promotion, just that office. No, lots of promotion, but that office. However, we've gone from being a fine arts department to a school of music to the latest incarnation, which is what we around here call SMAT, which is the School of Music, Art, and Theater. And you might wonder why I'm giving you this North Park history lesson right now. But I'm giving it because the next person is like the total embodiment of SMAT. Okay, so he's playing in the band. So there's the music part. If you saw the theater production last year, which was off-site and had a pit band, he played drums for that band. And if you know anything about musicals or playing in a pit, the drummer can train wreck anything, any moment. And he never did. I'm sorry, Liddy, I'm sorry everybody else, but I spent the whole time listening to that band and listening to the amazing playing that Seamus did back there. You know, because it's so hard, and the way it was set up, like they do so often, he's like 10 feet away from the music director, behind the shell, right? He's getting no help. So there's the theater part. And none of that is what he actually does. He's actually an art major, and his exhibition is up in Carlson Tower on the first floor. Interesting use of recyclable materials, by the way. And that's over there because he's an art major. So there he is, the quintessential SMAT person, Seamus Smith. And we saved the music majors for last, of course. On Thursday night this week, he played his performance trombone recital in this very space, about 15 feet away from where he's standing right now. And for all of us who are music faculty, you know, having somebody do their senior recital is just so exciting for all of us because we've seen them grow from where they were when they came to where they are now. And he has been involved with everything music we can do. And if you come and see the opera this week, you get to see the back my head and the back of Alfredo's head, because we're not facing the audience. You guys are looking at the people on stage, as you should. But look at the back of our heads at least once during the production, because we'll be there, because he's been there for everything for 4 years, doing everything with this wonderful attitude and this wonderful attitude for growth as a musician, which is what we as a faculty just adore in our students. Alfredo Martinez. Thank you all so much for coming out today. We're going to close out with about as joyful a noise as you get in jazz band. Dizzy Gillespie's Manteca.